The moon hid its face. Darkness cloaked the villages of northern France. Fear, like a serpent, began to coil around the hearts of men. Shepherds whispered tales of terror, shadows, swift and unnatural. Livestock drained of lifeblood. The true terror began when the villagers themselves disappeared. They returned days later, changed, with a hunger no earthly food could satisfy. Panic reached the court of the Dauphin, Charles. He was young, the heir to the throne, surrounded by worried advisors. Nobles, usually bold, now trembled. They spoke of a new menace, a darkness that had seeped into their land. Charles, his heart heavy with dread, sent an urgent message to Joan. She was his last hope, the only one who had ever defied the odds. Joan was in her village, seeking peace. But her respite was not meant to last. The whispers of darkness reached her too. As she knelt in prayer, a voice reached her. It was Saint Michael, his voice strong and resonant. "Joan," he said, "France is in peril. A darkness rises, a darkness you must vanquish." Joan did not hesitate. Her armor awaited. She mounted her horse, her sword strapped to her side. Her knights, loyal companions, gathered around her. They rode through the French countryside. A new threat cast a pall over the fields and forests. The air grew colder with each passing hour. Shadows deepened, stretching out like claws. When they arrived at the Dauphin's court, Charles greeted her with hope and despair. This was a battle for the soul of France. Joan knew that conventional weapons would not be enough. She needed the grace of God, the strength of her faith. At dawn, they rode out. Their destination was a small village, once filled with life. Now it was shrouded in silence. The closer they got, the colder the air became. Dead animals littered the road. The village was not empty. It was waiting. Joan's horse, Courage, sensed the evil. Joan patted his neck, calming him. Her knights fanned out around her, ready. A low growl echoed through the empty streets. From the shadows they came, men and women twisted into grotesque masks of hunger. Children, their eyes glowing with an unholy light. They were vampires, their souls forfeit to the darkness. Joan drew her sword. "Hold your ground, for France, for God." Each fallen vampire brought a moment of satisfaction. More kept coming, drawn to the warmth of living blood. Joan and her knights fought like lions. And then she saw him. The Dark One, Sir Edmund of Lancaster. He watched the battle with detached amusement. Joan reached the foot of the steps. The Dark One smiled, revealing elongated fangs. "So, the Maid of Lorraine comes to challenge me," he said. "I do not fear you," Joan said. "You are a servant of darkness. I will strike you down and cleanse this land." She charged up the steps, her sword raised high. Steel met steel. Joan, fueled by her faith, fought with the strength of 10 men. But Edmund was a creature of darkness. He pressed his attack, relentless. Joan parried, each block a testament to her skill. "You cannot win, little saint," Edmund hissed. "Serve me, and together we will rule this land." Joan spat on the ground, defiant. Your reign ends here, Edmund of Lancaster. Edmund broke away. Frantic, Joan's faith was her shield. She pressed her attack, forcing him back. But Edmund was not finished. He drew upon the darkness, channeling its power. Joan parried, but the impact sent her reeling. Joan closed her eyes, praying, "God, protect my people." A ray of sunlight pierced through the clouds. Edmund hissed, shielding his eyes. The sunlight struck Joan's discarded sword. The steel pulsed, radiating warmth. Edmund stumbled back, fearful. Joan opened her eyes, drawn to the light. This was the power of her faith. Joan reached out, her hand closing around the hilt of her sword. The light intensified, filling her with power. "You are right, Edmund," she said. "I wield the power of a god who has not abandoned his creation." Edmund lunged, but Joan was ready. With a cry, Joan struck. Edmund of Lancaster, the Dark One, was no more. Reims, a city of kings, now held captive by an unseen enemy. The journey was fraught with silence. The fields lay fallow and neglected. As they approached the city gates, Joan felt a weight settle upon her chest. The gates were ajar, the guards nowhere to be seen. "Where is everyone?" one of her knights whispered. Joan dismounted, her hand on her sword. "Hiding," she said, "or worse." The closer they got to the cathedral, the heavier the atmosphere became. A palpable darkness emanated from the heart of the city. The cathedral loomed before them, shrouded in gloom. "This is where they're strongest," Joan said. Her knights formed a protective circle around her. As they approached the entrance, the doors swung open. A cold wind swept out, carrying the scent of decay. Joan drew her sword. "May God be with us," she whispered. Section 3. The Heart of Darkness. The interior of the cathedral was plunged into an oppressive gloom, the air thick with the scent of incense and something ancient and malevolent. The shadows danced and writhed, taking on grotesque shapes that seemed to mock the sacred images. The vampires were waiting. They emerged from the shadows, their eyes burning like hot coals, their fangs bared in silent snarls. They were no longer mindless creatures. These were warriors, their movements honed by centuries of hunting. The battle began. Steel clashed against steel, the clang of swords echoing through the vast emptiness of the cathedral. Joan fought with the fury of a cornered lioness, her movements a blur of righteous anger. Each swing of her sword was a prayer, each fallen vampire a victory against the encroaching darkness. Her knights fought with the courage born of desperation, their loyalty to Joan their only shield against the overwhelming odds. But for each vampire slain, two more seemed to take its place. The air grew heavy with the stench of blood and fear. Joan, her armor stained with the blood of her enemies, fought her way towards the altar. She could feel the presence of the evil that orchestrated this assault. A darkness that pulsed at the heart of the cathedral, twisting and corrupting everything it touched. And then she saw him. He stood on the steps leading to the altar, his silhouette backlit by the faint glow of the candles. He was tall and imposing, his armor polished to a mirror sheen. In his hand, he held a sword that seemed to drink the light. "You have come far, Joan of Arc," a voice boomed from beneath the helmet. "But your journey ends here." Joan raised her sword, her gaze unwavering. "You mistake me for someone who fears death," she said. "I am a servant of God, and I will not rest until this land is cleansed of your taint." The figure laughed, a hollow, chilling sound that echoed through the cathedral. "You think you can defeat me? I am the darkness that slumbers in the heart of man. I am Legion, and I am eternal." With a roar, the figure charged. The battle that followed was unlike anything Joan had ever experienced. The figure moved with a speed and ferocity that defied comprehension. Joan, her strength failing, parried desperately, her every thought a prayer. The fate of France hung in the balance. This was the final confrontation, the duel that would decide the fate of a nation. The echoes of the battle faded. Silence descended upon the cathedral, a silence so profound it felt almost sacred. The air, thick moments before with the stench of evil and decay, cleared, replaced by the scent of incense and something else, something akin to hope. Joan lowered her sword, her arm trembling with exhaustion. Her gaze fell upon the figure that lay sprawled upon the altar steps, its armor shattered, its sword lying several feet away, dull and lifeless. The helmet had rolled free, revealing the face beneath. It was a face frozen in a rictus of rage and agony, a face drained of all humanity, yet vaguely familiar. A name escaped her lips, a whisper filled with sadness and pity. John? It was John Talbot, the English Earl of Shrewsbury, a man she had once respected, a man she had even admired for his skill in battle, his unwavering loyalty to his own cause. But the darkness had claimed him, twisted him into something monstrous, a puppet dancing to the tune of an ancient evil. Joan knelt beside the fallen knight, closing his vacant eyes with a gentle touch. "May God have mercy on your soul," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. News of the victory at Reims spread like wildfire across the war-torn nation. The darkness that had gripped France for what seemed like an eternity began to recede, like a nightmare fading with the dawn. The people, their spirits reignited by Joan's unwavering faith and courage, emerged from their homes, their hearts filled with a newfound hope. Joan, hailed as a saint, a saviour, a warrior of God, continued her journey. She knew that the battle against evil was never truly over, that the darkness could resurface at any moment, in any heart. But she also knew that the human spirit, fortified by faith and love, was a force to be reckoned with, a light capable of banishing even the darkest shadows. She travelled from village to village, town to town, her presence a beacon of hope, her words a balm for wounded souls. She spoke of courage and resilience, of the importance of faith and compassion. She reminded the people that they were not alone, that they had the strength within themselves to overcome any obstacle, to rebuild their lives, their communities, their nation, and the people listened. They took her words to heart, drawing strength from her unwavering belief in the goodness of humanity, in the power of faith to overcome even the darkest of times. Years passed. France, scarred but not broken, began to heal. The whispers of darkness faded, replaced by the laughter of children playing in the fields, the sound of hammers rebuilding homes and lives. The memory of the vampire plague, of the terror that had gripped the nation, remained. A cautionary tale, whispered around hearths on cold winter nights. Joan, her battles won, her duty to her king and her country fulfilled, retreated from the public eye. She sought solace in a small convent, dedicating her life to prayer and contemplation, finding peace in the quiet rhythm of monastic life. But even within the tranquil walls of the convent, Joan never forgot the lessons learned on the battlefield. She knew that the struggle between light and darkness, between good and evil, was eternal, a battle waged not just on the fields of war, but within the hearts of all mankind. And so, she prayed. She prayed for the souls of those lost to the darkness, for the strength of those who continued to fight against it. She prayed for peace, for understanding, for the day when the whispers of hatred and fear would be silenced by the chorus of love and compassion.